Thank you for being here. Today I'll be sharing tips on how to recognize if a paper submitted by a student is AI generated. My name is Sebastian Leśniewski. I've been teaching since 2002, mostly in the higher education context. I currently work as senior lecturer at Bloomsbury Institute London, where I teach research methods modules to undergraduate and postgraduate students, and I supervise dissertations of business students. And this is my 11th IATEFL conference. So, what is AI and how does it differ from digital technology in general? The way I understand it is that while computers do what we tell them to do, AI can learn from data and decide what to do. When an AI is given a task, that task is formulated as the end result of what we want, but AI is not specifically instructed on how it should get to that result. Then, generative AI is one way in which AI is applied. And large language model is one way in which generative AI is applied. These definitions come from this book titled Generative AI in Higher Education, the ChatGPT Effect. As I said, I supervise students' dissertations, so students need to conduct some research, collect and analyze data, and then write a report on it. And from time to time, chunks of text in those papers, in those dissertations, and sometimes the whole papers are AI generated. I've been dealing with this for a few years now, and so I'm going to share what I have learned. It's useful to look at the reference list and check for hallucinations, that is, fake references. Here we're looking at a reference list in a paper submitted by a student. At first sight, it looks quite neat. If I want to check if those sources really exist, the old school method is to copy the title of a given source, paste it to Google Scholar, and if this publication exists, it will just show up. So if I try the same strategy with the next paper on this list, Google Scholar is picking up all the words in this title, but not in one string. So it looks like this source doesn't exist. I can also check the journal where this paper was supposedly published, International Small Business Journal. We want volume 40, issue 1. So we find volume 40, issue 1. And it turns out that a paper with this title by these authors was never published in this particular journal. So this is a hallucination. This reference is made up. Spotting a hallucination in a reference list is probably as close as we can get to hard evidence that this student used generative AI. Now, the procedure that I just showed you does take a bit of time. There are quicker ways. For example, you can copy and paste the whole reference list into ChatGPT and ask if all the sources are genuine. However, I feel that I would still need to manually check if what ChatGPT is telling me is true, so I'd rather not use it for this purpose. It is time-consuming. With experience, you can become a little bit more efficient. I think I've developed a skill for spotting the titles that look like they might be hallucinations. For one thing, those titles tend to be rather bland. Sometimes a text looks AI-generated at first sight. I'm talking about the physical appearance. AI-generated text tends to use headings, subheadings, bullet points. Paragraphs tend to be of similar size, and what's the most bizarre, words and phrases might be bolded throughout the text, as we can see in this paper submitted by a student. We'll look at this paper in a moment. The obvious advice is to look at language. Sometimes a paper looks a little bit too eloquent for the student who submitted it. It's a passage from the text that we saw on the screen earlier. We can see some high-level vocabulary. And I particularly like this bit. Modern consumers, especially younger generations, are not only focused on product quality and price, but also on a brand's values and social impact. Authenticity, being transparent, ethical, and consistent in brand messaging is becoming a key factor in building long-term customer loyalty. Issues such as environmental sustainability, fair trade practices, and corporate social responsibility resonate strongly with ethically conscious shoppers in the UK. Now, if we can compare this with another piece of writing from the same student, but thank you for, yeah. For example, an email, we might have reasons to believe that these two texts were not written by the same person. There are AI detectors. The one that I've been using a lot is GPT-0, and it's as simple as this. Again, we're looking at the same text as earlier. I just copy a passage, I paste it into an AI detector, I click scan, and GPT-0 tells me that this text is 100% AI generated. Now, GPT-0 and other AI detectors are able to tell me this because they know how large language models work. You might remember the definition I showed earlier, that an LLM is a device that predicts the next word. You might have noticed a version of that in Microsoft Word. As you type, it can offer you suggestions of the next word that you might want to use. In some email systems as well, you've got this. And then the more you type, the more predictable the text becomes. So this is why AI-generated texts are rather bland. They are low on perplexity. So for example, if I told you that yesterday for lunch I had fish and, we know that the next word will be chips, so the phrase fish and chips will have low perplexity score because it's very predictable. But if I told you that I had fish and steak, that phrase would have a, yeah, I could have a fish. That phrase would have a higher perplexity score. Overall, human writing tends to be higher on perplexity than AI-generated writing, and this is what AI detectors pick up. They analyze a range of other features. One other that is quite important is burstiness. So that refers to the perplexity scores in the whole document, but also other features like sentence length, paragraph length. So a writing with similar sized sentences, similar sized paragraphs has a low burstiness score, whereas human writing overall tends to have higher burstiness scores. So that's something that we can't control consciously. I'm saying this because I want to briefly go back to the AI detectors. It has been pointed out that AI detectors might give false positives. They might indicate that the text is AI generated, while in fact it was written by a human, and apparently it's more likely to happen when the writer is neurodivergent and has a particular writing style. Another problem with AI detectors is that they can be bypassed. So again, there is a body of research saying that tweaking the command given to an AI can reduce the AI detector's certainty whether a given piece was AI generated. An AI detector might initially recognize a text as 100% AI generated, but with a few tweaks, it can say that the same text is 30% AI generated. On the other hand, there are a lot of studies comparing the effectiveness of different AI detectors, and it looks like by and large they work, and they are very highly effective. And the false positives can be reduced to zero if we use AI detectors in combination. So not just one AI detector, but more than one. I personally would treat an AI detector as evidence only when it tells me this is 100% AI generated, and in combination with other evidence, such as hallucinations, text formatting, language, but also the contents, which leads me to the next point. Let's look at another piece of writing submitted by a student. So when I paste this text into GPT-0, it tells me that this text is 100% AI generated, but it also tells me that it was originally AI, but then rewritten by AI or a human. Well, let's look at this text more closely. The UK consumers are a sizable number. This word choice is quite awkward. Some consumers admire eco-friendly packaging. Again, awkward word choice. And those who do not care, provided that. So now the grammatical structure of this sentence is messed up. There is a typo here. They are not sure whether they can result, so now it's not clear who the pronoun they refers to. All that might give a reader the impression that this text was written by a human because there are awkward language uses, errors, typos. Looks like this text was humanized, but it looks to me that humanizing is nothing more than just messing this text up a bit. And this text, this piece of writing still has features of an AI-generated text. So this is a 215-word paragraph with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 citations. Surely, the marker will not be checking every single citation. Well, I actually did. So, for example, the first one here is supposed to be backing up this claim. The UK consumers are a sizable number who claim to be environmentally concerned, but their purchasing behavior is otherwise. Most of the shoppers care more about price, convenience, and so on. And using this source to back this up. Well, I found this article, and what it actually says is this. So the main finding of this paper is not that people's declarations about being environmentally concerned are not reflected in their purchase behaviors. This paper is about something quite different. It does mention green packaging, but the discrepancy between people's declarations and their actual behaviors is not what this paper is about. So this source was misused. And so is every single one of these sources in this paragraph. An AI can quickly find papers with the right keywords, for example, consumer behavior, green packaging, and then slap them in the text as citations, or sometimes makes them up. Then the student doesn't check those citations and just submits the paper. I want to call this the silly use of AI, without any criticality. Another notorious feature of AI-generated text is vagueness. But, however, some people say this, but others say something else. Things are obscured. We are not sure. There's no clear evidence. There is ambivalence. A sizable number, but we don't quite know how big. Some people, most people, but we are not told exactly how many. So an AI-generated text is vague. It doesn't give us any detail. Things are complex. It's hard to say anything for sure. This vagueness is also visible in the structure. We know that it's good to open a paragraph with a topic sentence which summarizes the main point, and then the rest of the paragraph develops that point, adds detail, adds examples. You could say that this paragraph begins in this classic way. The UK consumers are a sizable number who claim to be environmentally concerned, but their purchasing behavior is otherwise. So we would expect in the rest of this paragraph some example situations where people's declarations are one thing and their actual purchase behaviors are something else. The second sentence sort of gives an example. Most of the shoppers care more about price, convenience, and recognizable brands. But then the rest of this paragraph doesn't develop this thought. What kind of data shows that these are the UK consumers' preferences? What research was conducted? What methods did they use? What products does this apply to? How does this phenomenon compare across different age groups? There is no such detail here. Instead, this paragraph repeats pretty much the same vague declaration over and over again, casually throwing in some concepts like challenges for retailers, different perceptions of green packaging, but not developing any of these concepts either. This writing is like cotton candy, adding more and more words to make it look big, but there's almost nothing in there. Thank you. Sliding on the topic, but not going anywhere deeper. I have one other analogy. In Pulp Fiction, there is this scene where Jules and Vincent are in a situation, their car is splattered with blood, and they have very little time to sort it out. But Mr. Wolf comes to the rescue. He tells them to give the car a quick wipe and then line the interior with duvet so it doesn't look suspicious at first sight as they drive it to a scrapyard. This is what Mr. Wolf says. So I would say that this text is a bit like that. It basically looks good only at first sight. The awkward language is supposed to make it look human-written. The citations are to make it look academic. And if the marker doesn't look at it too closely, doesn't check the citations, they might decide that it's okay for a pass. But this is not good academic writing. And yet, students tend to see AI-generated text as better than what they can write. So perhaps our job as teachers is to get our students to realize that AI-generated writing only looks good at first sight. There's one other analogy that I used before. It's from macroeconomy. Some countries resorted to printing extra money to cover the deficits, which led to a hyperinflation. That happened in the 1920s Germany. A loaf of bread cost 160 German marks in 1922, but 200 billion marks in 1923. A similar thing happened in Hungary in the 1940s after the Second World War, and more recently in Zimbabwe. The hyperinflation happens because this printed extra money does not reflect the value of the goods and services that are available within that economic system. So it's empty money. In the same way, AI generates empty text. It's empty because it does not reflect thinking. Shakespeare described that more than 400 years ago. AI can quickly give us infinite amounts of empty text, so that also must lead to an inflation, and I think it's happened already, because we can no longer treat writing on its own as evidence of learning. So what can we do about this? In this book, there is a chapter about redesigning assessment in the AI era with the following 6 suggestions. So multiple assessment methods rather than one, focusing on things like problem solving, prioritizing formative forms of assessment rather than summative. I have one more analogy, the last one for today. There are some inventions that changed enormously over time, for example, the telephone, but there are also inventions that haven't changed that much. And I think Viva is the sort of invention that hasn't changed for centuries. And Viva ticks a lot of boxes from this list. It diversifies the assessment techniques, so it's not just writing but also talking about the submitted work. It involves problem solving. What? Yeah, okay. It involves problem solving. It looks for the student's original thought, and it engages soft skills. I'm talking about being able to recognize if a student's paper is AI generated, not because I want to catch them and fail them. If a student is, if a student is sending us AI generated stuff, ideally we should spot it early and do something about it. Trying to prevent students from using AI is both unrealistic and unreasonable. My goal is to discourage students from using AI in a silly way. Like this student. So it's an email from a student. Here is how I replied. And here is the student's reply. That's the real one, yeah. I'm sorry that this screen is a bit small for, yeah, sorry. AI can definitely be used to enhance learning, thank you. Recently, I came across a podcast called Harvard Thinking. There was an episode titled Preserving Learning in the Age of AI Shortcuts, where a professor of applied mathematics talked about his experiences. He used to give his students mathematical problems to solve, but then one day he discovered that those very advanced mathematical tasks can be solved by AI in seconds. So here is what he did about it. I'm guessing that we couldn't just copy and paste this example into our contexts. I mean, I don't teach applied mathematics to Harvard students, as you noticed. But I guess the principle here is using AI in a critical way. And this professor also mentioned bringing in oral exams, which goes back to my earlier point about the Viva. One more fun fact. What we refer to as AI is also called artificial narrow intelligence because it only does specific tasks. The next invention that we are still waiting for is AGI, which will be as capable intellectually as the human, and it will be able to do things without any human input. But that's not the end. Artificial superintelligence will surpass human capabilities, and it is described as the computers gaining consciousness. For the time being, AGI and ASI are still theoretical concepts, but yeah, what a relief. Basically, artificial intelligence is a moving target. My colleague Elizabeth at the University of Greenwich is working on her PhD, and as part of her research, she interviewed 22 lecturers in 13 higher education institutions. One of the questions she asked to all her interviewees was, what kind of training related to generative AI did you receive? And none of them had received any training. Interestingly, 2 respondents said that they were asked to train their colleagues, even though they themselves never got any training. Sounds familiar, right? I talked about GPT-0, which you can use for free, but there is a limitation on how much text you can scan per month. For the full version, you would have to pay. So my way around it was to create several accounts. I used 7 different email addresses. So when I run out of credits on one account, I log out and I log in as another account. AI can definitely be used to enhance learning, as in the Harvard professor example. Now, this phrase, ethical use of AI, keeps popping up, but my impression is that it's rarely specifically defined. The risk is that if we tell our students that they can use AI as long as they do it ethically, but we don't specify how they can use it and what they can use it for, they might interpret it as permission to use AI. And I've had some experience of this. Also, I like the phrase critical use of AI better. Because AI is a moving target, a lot of what I'm saying now might soon become obsolete. But the reason why I'm talking about being able to recognize an AI-generated paper will not change. Our job as teachers is to help our students learn and grow. And using AI in this silly, naive, uncritical way that I've been talking about today doesn't seem beneficial to our students' growth. So it's all I've got time for today. If you think this talk might be useful, you can download my slides by scanning the QR code, and the recording will soon appear on YouTube. Thank you very much. Thank you.